Hi, everybody. Welcome to the WAU Most Awesome Founder podcast, a show about entrepreneurs, innovators, advisors, and educators, and the stories that make them who they are today. I'm your host, Dries Faems, and today we welcome to the podcast Sergio Chavez. Sergio is the global head of marketplace and partnerships at Sastrify, a startup that helps other companies in their software as a service negotiations and automations. Sergio, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dries, for having me.
What we always do as a starting point is actually to give the floor to our guest to tell something about their personal background, where they're coming from, how they ended up in Germany, how they ended up at the company where they are today. So I would say the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, first and foremost, I'm actually a WHU alumni from the full-time MBA 2015. I was actually just in campus last weekend, which was fantastic to see how it's been growing. But on the other side, I'm actually originally from Mexico, but have been living in Germany already for almost 10 years. The story behind it is relatively straightforward. I met my wife back in Mexico, who is from Würzburg in Germany, and actually she was the one that brought me here. And in terms of my career, I actually started as a management consultant. But since 2011, I actually switched to tech, most specifically in the B2B software space. And since then, I've been holding different global roles at different players in the ecosystem. So the way that I typically like to explain it is, if you see the B2B software value chain, you have on one end, you have the users. So all of us that use software in our companies. And on the other extreme, you have the makers, all the companies that actually produce all the B2B software products. Then you have the sellers in between, who are the ones basically connecting both sides, and then the supporters that are really everyone that is providing the underlying technology to make this ecosystem happen. So in my personal experience, I've actually been in all of those spots, so to say. So I, of course, as a user, but also as a basically my first project in the SaaS world or software world was actually working for a telecommunications company, building their cloud business, their initial cloud marketplaces for small and medium businesses. Then I moved to the software provider who provided the underlying marketplace technology, so to the supporter bucket. That was then acquired by one of the largest distributors of software and hardware worldwide. So I moved into the seller space. And now Sastrify, which is, I think, a nice combination because it's actually a maker. So it's a software vendor per se. So we have our own product, but we also have our own marketplace. So we are actually channel partners or sellers from other software products. So that's how I've been moving around since back then.
Yeah, and I would say actually your final move now. So when I read your LinkedIn, I could see that you started working at Sastrify in 2022. And as you mentioned, you did a full-time MBA at WAU before. You worked at some more, I think, more corporate companies before. So I would say jumping to a kind of novel startup is not always a kind of straightforward choice for people that have invested a lot in an MBA and have built a corporate career. So can you maybe explain a bit more what was kind of your motivation to make that jump to join Sastrify at the time when it was really kind of a new company starting off?
Yeah, definitely. Just for your reference, actually, Sastrify is my second startup in which I joined. I actually joined while I was at Ingram Micro, one of my the previous company. I actually jumped into another startup, but actually I soon came back to Ingram Micro because a great project with my previous manager opened up. Actually, that's why my stay in that startup was relatively short. But yeah, in regards to Sastrify, I think it was a really great combination of things that came together. So first and foremost, Sastrify was founded by two WHU alumni, Sven Lackinga and Max Messing. They're actually second-time founders, so they already know how this space works. They actually had a successful exit with their previous startup. And of course that already has a significant impact for people like me coming from a corporate background. Like, okay, you're already joining a company that is basically founded by two people that know what they're doing. So that
Mm.
was already one compelling event for me. The other compelling event was, of course, the funding of the company, since despite the fact that it's a young company, so it was founded in 2020, it has grown pretty
Mm.
rapidly, and basically every year since then, there's been a funding round. So actually, before I joined, Sastrify had closed its Series A, which of course the
Yeah.
Series A is one of those big milestones in the life of a startup. The first, let's say, one of the first major milestones. And of course that implies that, okay, these has some legs, and this is actually going into bigger scale. Um, and I would say the third factor was actually the fact that it was really a in the intersection of many things that I've done in the past. No, so as I mentioned to you when I was explaining a little bit of the how the B2B software ecosystem works and the major players, it's very interesting because in the past that I worked very much on the maker side, like with the software vendors, with the distributors. But what I realized since then is that the amount of sophistication from from the software vendors, from the resellers, all the intermediaries was incredible. No? Like there were statistics, there were processes, there was tooling, there was a lot of sophistication on that side. No? But when you look at the users, so the actual customers that are paying for the software, no? Like
Mm.
they were really pretty much living still in the stone age, no? Like managing their software on an Excel file, trying to keep track of
Yeah.
things, really with, of course, sellers coming all the different ways, trying to buy their products, no? Uh, people buying the credit card. So it was really the Wild West. No?
Yeah.
And again, the degree of sophistication was actually very, very poor. No? So the fact that Sastrify from its beginning actually deliberatively position itself from the side of the user or the customer, no? Like really
Mm.
trying to enable that customer to sort of like level up the playing field, no? Because of previously being totally uneven, no? And trying to,
Yeah.
let's say, bring up the software customers, the software users, no? To a level where they really have control and visibility, and have statistics, have information to make better informed decisions. That for me was like an incredible thing when I first saw it. And again,
Yeah.
it was sort of like a great move for me to be able to help those companies that were struggling with that, no? Which I saw in the past.
Okay. Yeah. And because maybe also for our audience to explain a bit what Sastrify is doing. And so imagine that I'm a small and medium-sized company, and I have all these subscriptions on I don't know what, on Asana, on Teams, ChatGPT nowadays, whatever. And indeed, I think still nowadays, a lot of these companies simply have an Excel with their overview of subscriptions. But of course, there will be a lot of kind of services that are duplicated in different offerings. You might have Slack, you might have Teams. So, what is the kind of the value proposition that you bring to these
Yeah,
companies as Sastrify?
yeah, great question. So the way that I personally like to explain it is we help actually other companies similar to us, like fast growing startups, scale ups, to
Yeah.
basically solve their software chaos.
Yeah.
So, because as you mentioned, like the type of customers that we work with are, again, fast growing companies similar to us that use 100 plus different software tools, and nobody really has control of what they have, who's bought what, how much money they're giving away, which are the key dates, if they need those parts or not. Like they're, again, it's the Wild West pretty much, no? And of course
Yeah.
it happened especially in the previous years. But of course now with all these different macroeconomic environment, it's a little bit different, I would say, since 2022 and into 2023. But in the past, like all of these companies were just going into a buying spree and basically buying everything
Yeah.
that looked shiny, promising, cool, and of course everyone with a credit card was out some stuff. But of course, then
Yeah.
when the whole macroeconomic landscape changed for startups, no, like then they really need to look into, okay, what do I really have, no? And especially because for a lot of these companies, especially let's say digital native companies, when you look into their P&Ls, pretty much it's people, it's offices, and it's then software, no? Like the third
Mm.
major bucket in their P&L. So there's a significant amount of
Yeah.
money that goes into that, but nobody really knows what's there, no?
Yeah.
So what Sastrify basically does is we basically solve that in three ways. So on the one hand side, we have our own product, which basically acts as the single source of truth for the entire software stack of a customer. No? So all of those products that they have through different mechanisms, we basically put it in a single place, and they know clearly, like, okay, who's owning what, how much money we're giving away, where the contract, the
Okay.
dates, and then they can manage the entire life cycle of each and every product. From a, we just found these cool product, like it happens with a lot of our customers now with AI tools, like they're trying AI
Yeah.
tool here, AI tool there. No, you know that much better than anyone. I know. and and then it's like, okay, that's all like triggers the entire life cycle. No, from a, this is compliant with our budget, compliant with our security, and now we bought it, now there's a renewal. Like all of that life cycle collaboration analytics happens inside our product. No?
Okay.
But in addition to that, we do two more things. So we have our professional services arm. So we have a team of um, procurement ninjas that actually help our customers to, in the first place, to optimize their software stack, no? Like everything that is in our product. But most importantly, as they evolve, they're the ones that are supporting them in negotiations, providing them
Okay.
advice, supporting them on how to evolve their software stack. And then the last thing that we have is our own marketplace. No? So I'm actually responsible for that marketplace, where we
Mm-hmm.
basically give the option to our customers to buy that software directly from us. And
Okay.
of course, we basically, on the other hand, we act as a two-sided marketplace where we have partnerships with the software vendors, with distributors, with different partners, and so forth.
Okay, so again, to go back to the example, when I'm a German Mittelstand company, I can become a customer of you, and then I can kind of create a dashboard where I will see all my subscriptions with all the details, the legal issues, which kind of services, and then I can even kind of rely on you to help me to kind of buy the software that I still need from your marketplace.
Correct. So actually, what we do is when our customers join, so we do this whole onboarding process. They, again, through different mechanisms, we provide that single source of truth, and then our customer success team, with our procurement specialists, with our marketplace team, basically all look into, okay, what do they have? How can these be optimized? What makes sense to go here, go there? No? So we
Yeah.
proactively go with our customers, and support them on that, and that we do on a regular basis. No?
Okay, but because I think then it's quite interesting because you're also then you're in your responsibility. You're also responsible for managing these partnerships with these software providers. But it seems to be for me a quite challenging role because on the one hand, you want to create a partnership with them and get good deals so that on your marketplace you can kind of advertise good deals. At the same time, you want to help the users to kind of how do I have to say it to find out what do I really need and is really do they not offer me too much? So on the one hand, you want to kind of help the user in kind of fighting the software provider, and at the same time, the same software provider is an important partner in your marketplace. So how do you deal with that kind of tension?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. That's our daily business.
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, the way we position ourselves, and not only from a marketplace perspective, but in general as Sastrify, is we're basically the middleman trying to bring the best of both sides. No? So we're
Mhm.
not, let's say, in the business of going against the software vendors, no? And extracting every single penny available. No? We're actually in the
Yeah.
middle, like trying to basically bring both sides to the table, in the most, let's say, fast, efficient, and I would say, from a price perspective, like find a fair middle ground for both parties. No? Um, because again, going back into what I was mentioning before, when we talk to many of our customers, no? Like again, the level of sophistication, the level of understanding of how the market works, the fact that they just don't know what levers they have available to, again, get better deals, get better opportunities. No? So
Yeah.
we support them on all of that. No? But on the other
Mm.
hand, the value that we generate for the software vendors is we tell them, like, hey guys, we're generating new business opportunities for you. We're also helping you to identify growth opportunities with existing customers that you serve. We make it fast. We bring you with the right stakeholders, which is a great value for them, because typically their direct sales teams are in many cases they're struggling just to find the right person to talk to. And we have all of
Yeah.
those executive relationships, and through that we can expedite the process. Of course, it doesn't come for free. Of course, that means they need to give like special preferential conditions to our customers.
Yeah.
And but again, it's this give and take, no? That
Yeah.
we're always in this balancing act, trying to act in the best interest for both parties, but especially for our customers, who again at the end of the day are the software buyers, no? And in my view, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying for the whole ecosystem to work, no? Uh,
Yeah.
and it's a market that has been underserved, I think, for many years, until the emergence of these new software category in which we are.
And what do you mean with that, with this new software category?
So with Sastrify
Yeah.
is,
Okay.
is in these software procurement or SaaS procurement category, no? Which is
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
and
you are a kind of intermediary that is changing also with the power dynamics in this whole negotiation story, not because before, if I don't have good insight in as a user in all these different offerings, it's very difficult to negotiate good deals. And now you, as an intermediary, you can actually help me to improve my bargaining power position.
correct. And just to add to that, when we look at our customers, the software purchasing decisions typically sit with different stakeholders, no? Like
Hmm.
our smaller companies, it typically lies with the CEO, with the CFO, with the CTO. Our larger customers have a procurement team, probably one, two people, or even a larger organization. And of course, they have a greater degree of sophistication. But especially with smaller customers, like they just don't know. No? Like they know from their own experience, but beyond that, like they're out of touch with what's the latest and greatest in the market, how are the
Yeah.
dynamics working, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. And actually, when I talk about B2B with my students, I'm always telling them, look, one of the core challenges is that the person that is paying is often different from the person that is using. And that's especially in software, I would say. The people that use Asana or that are using Slack might be different from the person that has to pay the invoice. Now, I suppose that also has implications for you guys as an intermediary in this ecosystem. How do you deal with that kind of topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we have at Sastrify is all of those different individuals. So the customer, that's it, who pays the bill, and the user, they're all inside Sastrify. No? So we have this concept of tool owners. So basically, each tool, you were mentioning Asana, Microsoft, Google, each of them typically has a tool owner. So there's a person
Mm.
that is ultimately responsible for uh, the contract, for the invoicing, to decide like, okay, there's a time of the renewal. Should we continue? Should we change? So those are typically the tool owners. And then, of course, those tool owners have then users that they enable, and then on top of those tool owners, there's typically the CTO or the CFO, somebody at a management level that has the oversight of different how those different pieces play with each other. So we actually have contact with all of those different levers, no?
Okay.
And at the end of the day, trying to enable them in different ways, no? Whether through our own resources or through our different partners that we also bring to the mix. But at the end
Mm.
of the day, of course, as you mentioned, typically what we realize is, especially when it comes to new software buying decisions, no? Like, I don't know, a customer has a CRM, and their current CRM is no longer working, and they
Yeah.
need a new one, no? So we're also advising those tool owners and the users in terms of, hey, what are some of the key needs that you really require, trying to find who the best alternatives are, no? And bringing different partners into the mix. So I would say it's a fascinating process, because we really have I would say a deep relationship inside the organizations that we work, and really
Yeah.
it's with those organizations we can provide the greatest value, no? Like the more we can interact with the organization, the more value we can bring. And we see it. We see a lot of similarities with, let's say, other products like spend management tools, like traveling tools, where basically like any employer of the company that wants to book a trip needs to do it through the app,
Mm.
or any employee that
Yeah.
wants to get a reimbursement for whatever trip needs to do it through the app. So
These systems are most of the time not that user friendly in my experience.
exactly. We're trying our best to make those as user friendly as possible. But the idea is like, if you want whatever type of software, like go to Sastrify. That be your go-to place for any software related inquiry.
Yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned before that Sastrify has raised Series A. Actually, last year, we are at the end of the year. They raised significant Series B and a Series B extension. There was even a debt financing announcement on Crunchbase. So Sastrify has actually raised quite some money. Now, typically, we learn our students marketplaces are kind of asset light business models. So then the question is a bit, why do you need that kind of money? In what kind of activities are you investing the money that is raised?
Yeah.
How is this helping Sastrify to grow?
Yeah, great question. So of course the primary focus is the development of our product. So the marketplace, I think what's important is the marketplace is one of the three pillars of a value proposition. But of course, being a SaaS company ourselves, our product is always where most of the investment goes in expanding our engineering team, and basically making our product more robust, over and over. So that's really where the biggest investment always goes. But of course, the other big bucket is in terms of international expansion. So for us,
Okay.
of course, being a German company, the DACH market is, and Europe overall is where we're the strongest. But US, we've been already active in the US since already a couple of years, and of course, we're right now with that extra injection of capital, doubling down in the expansion of our US presence. Also because
Okay.
when you see the bigger landscape, we're actually there's other two major players in the space from the US expanding into Europe. So right now we're in the middle of that run. Plus, of course, there's many small players coming into the space. But what's interesting is now there's also consolidation starting to happen in this space. So we just announced earlier this month our first acquisition. And of course, you can start seeing how the market is going to start little by little to consolidate. So it's basically, to answer your question, is about, let's say, growing our product, growing our footprint, and of course, starting to invest in these strategic initiatives such as M&A.
Yeah, so it's becoming a game of you need to have the financial resources to support exponential growth, to kind of have a war chest to fight the competition that is out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, are you almost on a daily basis? You're managing partnerships, both the user side, but also with these software providers. Now, I'm always very fascinated by people that are responsible for that kind of topic, because I would say it's quite different from what we traditionally see as managers. Traditionally, managers are people that kind of are responsible for a team internally, and they have to make sure that they do what they need to do, that they coordinate. But when you are a partnership manager, you actually need to coordinate and align with people with whom you don't have a kind of hierarchical relationship because they work at another company. So I would say that this is much more challenging than being a manager of internal people. Now, based on your own experiences, what do you see as the most challenging part of doing this kind of partnership management?
Yeah, great question. I'm thinking, there's many challenges, but I would say probably the main one is that there's no playbook for partnerships today. And let me try to explain that. So when we talk about other business functions,
Yeah.
sales, marketing, operations, there's typically, I think, a very robust body of knowledge around those.
We learn at the MBA at BAU how to do sales.
Exactly. And of course, there's different frameworks, tools, you name it. No? Professional associations, like the degree of sophistication of those business functions, I think is significantly. No? But when it comes to partnerships is one of those areas that I think it's still emerging. There's but of course it's becoming more and more important, especially in the tech space. But I think overall across industries. But it's still I would say an emerging, again, business function, which in the past has been spread across different business functions. No? Like it was in the past done by sales, marketing did a little bit of it, operations did a little bit of that, procurement did a little bit of that. Like everyone had some degree of saying into partnerships, but I think in the past there was not like a overall umbrella in which all partnership related activities were consolidated or concentrated. No? So I think the biggest challenge for those of us in partnerships and actually I was having a great conversation earlier today with another partnership colleague of mine at a different company, because what we were saying is that actually this is my first formal partnership role where I have the partnership title, but I've been in partnerships basically during the whole time that I've been in tech. No? It was just not known as partnerships. No? But at the end of the day, again, this is an emerging field, and there's really, I would say, still up to today, not a definitive playbook on how to best run a partnership organization, how to best deal with partners. But I think fortunately there's organizations, I'm actually active in many of them, that are emerging, try to actually build that body of knowledge, those playbooks, those methodologies, which are giving those of us in the partnership space sort of like the toolkit to do our job. No? But it's still in its infancy, I would say. But as I mentioned,
and do you maybe have a concrete example of a topic where you would eagerly want to have a playbook and where you have a feeling that the playbook is missing? What kind of topic are you thinking about then?
I can think of so many, but just like simply like how do you like there's this I was actually at a conference earlier this year in the US about this topic, about partnerships, and one of the big things that we were all talking about is the importance of quality above quantity, that like how important it is to have a small set of great partners. But of course that's not static. No? Like sometimes you need quantity, then you go into quality, and it's like an evolving thing. No? But like how do you know when to change? No? Or let's say when you have multiple partners, like how do you select the best ones? How do you manage them? And actually it was fantastic because that we were in a session really going through an Excel file, looking at all the different criteria that he and her, like everyone was using. And we were also like trying to put our heads together on it. Hey, what are the KPIs that you're using? What are the key things that you're doing? And try to just basically build a template that all of us in that community could reuse. Because at the end of the day, what I also realize is that everyone has been sort of like reinventing the wheel without the need of it, just because the lack of, let's say, watering holes or communities where partnership people just hang out. No? Like again, for sales, for marketing, there's many organizations, many communities, but for partnerships, there are just a few of them. No? So, and these typically small, local. No? But now there's some major communities at a global base that are emerging, and which allow us to that cross-pollination, that collaboration, which is now finally happening. No?
Yeah. No, and I think the challenge that you mentioned is a very interesting one, because I can imagine that it even triggers a lot of discussion within companies, because for instance, when I talk nowadays with a lot of companies, they often talk about, we need to build strategic partnerships with external partners to co-develop innovations and all that kind of stuff. And but they're actually saying we want to go for quality. Yeah? So we want to have a limited number of partners with whom we can have in-depth collaboration to really understand each other and to jointly build stuff. But then I often, when in these companies, I start talking with the procurement people, they are often very kind of wary of this kind of stuff, because they're saying, yeah, but now our bargaining power is really affected, because if we are becoming so dependent on a limited number of partners in our portfolio, these partners can easily abuse that in the next negotiation for the marketplace in your case. So that seems to be even a kind of challenge where different people within your own organization can have very different opinions, I would say.
Yeah, and look, I think there's also a mindset shift happening in terms of partnerships. Um,
Mm,
Also earlier this year, so I was at different partnership conferences, some with, let's say, more senior executives in the partnership world, some more younger executives in the partnership world, and you do see differences in terms of mindset, in terms of how they operate. No? Like, I would say, despite the fact that there hasn't been like a definitive playbook, no? Like, you see let's say the senior executives much more focused into controls and structure and
mm,
hierarchy and these type of things, while you look into the younger generations that are stepping into these roles, which are much more into experimentation, messiness, like iteration, without a lot of formalities. Of course, that implies, as always, challenges from a legal perspective, and what happens if things
no,
go south. No? Like, very idealistic. No? Um,
no,
but I think that shift is happening from going from a very structured, top down approach, no? um, to a much more dynamic, well, pretty much like in the startup world, no? Like, very
no,
iterative, open collaboration, like those type of things. But again, the thing is that there's still not a playbook on how to do that right. No? And this
no.
is where I think all of those that are practitioners and that are basically on a daily basis doing these are trying to sort of like get our heads together in terms of so how to work best. Like, what are the templates, what are the tools, what are, like, how does the toolkit looks like for somebody? Because again, I think each of us has been sort of like reinventing the wheel without the need to do that.
Yeah. No, and yeah. But so you would say we need a kind of codification also of what is working, what is not working, so that we can learn from each other and build this playbook together, I would say.
100%. 100%.
Okay, good. Now, at the same time, I also noticed in your LinkedIn that you're actually also kind of trying to help others in getting a playbook. Namely, I saw that you have been, and I think still are, quite active in helping international professionals to develop a career in Germany. Um, can you maybe tell a bit more about what you're actually doing there and why you are doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, that's, let's say, my entrepreneurial part. Let's say most of the work that I've done has been for corporates, for startups, in an entrepreneurship role. But that's, let's say, in terms of external entrepreneurship that I've been doing, and really the primary, I would say, the main trigger was really my move to Germany. The fact
Mm-hmm.
that I came to Germany, I had no connections to Germany. I basically started from scratch. Of course.
So tell me the first thing that shocked you when you started working in Germany.
Oh God, like, there's so much things, but I think, like, I just realized, like, how relevant it was to speak up, um, in which is something that, let's say, I would, despite the fact that I was in a consulting world before in Mexico, quite competitive, but I never really taken, let's say, that assertiveness. And what I realized is that here in Germany, you're not only, um, um, allowed to, but actually encouraged to speak up when things go south and those type of things. And I think in my first professional experience here in Germany, I had some challenge because I didn't speak up in certain way, when it had to be, no? And of course that was a big hit and big learning. But I think that's what sort of like helped me, and also motivated me to support other professionals and so forth. No? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, my major motivation was coming over to Germany. Actually, I'm not the first one, let's say, in my family who's gone abroad. My sister actually lives in the U.S. She's been there for over 20 years now. So in the family, there's that.
Okay.
Somehow we've ended up in different locations, and and actually what I try to do since I got here is to stay connected with the Mexican community in Germany, participate in different professional associations, but actually got more and more engaged in the community. And there was a compelling event in the middle. So there was a Mexican Germany dual year, an initiative between both governments. And together with other Mexicans, we actually published a book, like a catalog of Mexicans working in Germany, no? Just to
Okay.
know who's doing what, not like who are we? No? There's
Yeah.
17,000 Mexicans in Germany, and we were like, okay, so who's
Okay.
doing what? No?
Yeah.
And that led us to actually deciding to start a business. Started basically working in different offerings from workshops, career counseling, a platform of networking. So trying to support Mexicans in their professional journey. But what we also realize is that the needs of the scientists, the needs of business people, the needs of technology people, the needs of those that are just starting, the needs from those that have been 10 years here are entirely different. So that's the reason why
Okay.
at the end of the day we ended up shutting down that business, that initiative. But of course, I'm still active. I'm still, for example, there's a community called Megarapreneurs, no? Where I'm actually a mentor for people that wants to enter into tech. I'm active at an organization called Two Hearts, which here in Germany
Mm.
has become quite prominent.
Yeah.
So basically, with those of us that have these two hearts, no, who either come from abroad or were born here but with different migration background. No? But at the end of the day, the point of connection is also that tech specific. No? So I'm active in all those different communities now, supporting in different roles. But at the end of the day, it's about like trying to make it easier for others that are basically pursuing a similar path as myself, in terms
But
of
maybe let us take a specific use case, because you mentioned you have done the full-time MBA at WHU. Now, in this full-time MBA program, we typically have quite some non-German people that actually do the full-time MBA at WHU to actually increase their likelihood to build a good career in Germany. Yeah? So they see that, I think, rightfully as a kind of entry ticket to the German labor market. So if we think about this group of people to which you actually also belonged some years ago, what are their core struggles to realize that ambition?
yeah. Well,
Next to the weather, we cannot change that. But apart from that, what would you see as the core struggles?
yeah, that's a great, and actually I had the privilege to also be a coach for the MBA students. So that's the reason why I was
Okay.
actually in the Düsseldorf campus last weekend. But look, what I realized is that I think there's many misconceptions for those that come here, no? In terms of what is needed, in terms of the path to take, and so forth. Um, like something that is a no-brainer that I think it's incredible that it's still even up to today not so prominent, but it's just like, for example, language skills, no? Like
Yeah.
if you're going into a customer facing role or into a partner facing, like an external facing role, you need German, period. No?
Mm, mm,
Like if you're going to be dealing with customers from Germany or the DACH region, partners from Germany, DACH region, you do need the language, full stop. No? Like no matter
mm,
what, how great credentials you have, but you do need that skill set. No? The other thing is, again, I think a lot of people come with a especially, I would say, MBA students in general. These are all high performing individuals, ambitious individuals that already have
mm,
some traction in their careers from whatever they come from. And they, like, even if they have some big logos in their CV, like they believe that, okay, now with an MBA on top, and it doesn't need to be from WHU for whatever it is, no? Like
mm,
doors are going to like automatically open for them, no? Which
mm,
in my view, I think that's also a big misconception. So it's not that
mm,
just because they have those big logos in their CV, like opportunities are just going to open up for them. They still need to do the legwork of networking, connecting,
mm,
building their brand. No? And that's something that just takes time, no? But it takes a deliberate effort, um, it to do that. No? And it's just not that because I have a great brand from the past and I have now a great business school diploma, like just employers are going to come to me. So they need to put the work on doing that. No? And that was actually my motivation back then of doing the MBA, of basically building my network, which I was building from scratch back then. No?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a couple of examples that come top of mind.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, if we look at the other way, because the German economy is struggling to some extent, we know that Germany, to kind of survive, will need a lot of external people for the labor market. So based on your experience, what would you recommend to German employers if they want to become an attractive employer for high potential managers coming from outside?
Yeah. So I'm thinking. I think a great example is what we're doing at Sastrify. So at Sastrify, um, it's not a corporate; it's a startup, no? But still, I think some of the practices that we're implementing, I think, are very valuable. No? So, for example, there's certain things that we're doing in terms of providing a learning budget. No? Like you can basically you get as an employee a fixed learning budget that you can then spend in getting your German skills up to speed, getting your technical skills up to speed. No? We're also offering 100% remote setup, no? Which I think, especially those of us like myself that have a family, no? Appreciate a lot. No? I think that the days of going to an office Monday through Friday are long gone. No? I think there's some industries where it's still required. Like, of course, if you need to do some physical job there with machinery whatsoever, you cannot do it virtually. But I think many of the jobs nowadays can be done pretty much fully virtually. And having that flexibility, I think it's also a big value. No? The fact of also providing that opportunity to grow, because what I've also realized in the previous jobs that I had in Germany, like things tend to be like relatively stiff in terms of, okay, you're at and then in a specific department, in a specific role, and sort of like you're there, and the opportunities to go and do other things in other departments are relatively limited. No? And we encourage a lot in Sastrify that cross collaboration between departments, like even beyond your current role. Like as long as you perform in your current role, you're also encouraged to go and try some other things, contribute here and there. And that's still, I would say, not the norm in many German organizations, no? Where there's a lot of, okay, you're expected to come perform, say whatever your boss says, no? And there's still a very hierarchical organization. So I think that flexibility, especially for newer generations, which are, in my view, those that really have, I would say, the hunger to come and pretty much start from scratch, no? Which of course is a big risk, is a big leap of faith. No? I think those are the things that make an employer attractive to these type of international, high performing, ambitious talent overall.
Yeah. And so even at a company like Sastrify, would you still say that excellent knowledge of German language is a necessary condition, or?
It is, again, if you're dealing with local customers, local partners.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're dealing with, I don't know, US customers, European customers outside the DACH region, of course, it's not mandatory. Actually, we're encouraging, our general language is English, but at the end of the day, depending on the market that you're serving, language still plays a significant role. Like even we see it with the type of customers that we serve, which are, again, in their 30s, 40s, they all know English. But the fact of you being able to speak in German to them, it just creates a different level of trust, a different level of confidence. So it helps. No? So it's probably not, in some cases, it's not mandatory, not because the people doesn't know English or so, but this creates a different level of engagement, of collaboration. So that's why I would say still for external facing roles, it is, in my personal view, still mandatory. Let me probably rephrase. It's probably not mandatory, but it's certainly a key differentiator, which basically opens up the pie of opportunities significantly.
No, no, but I actually would agree because I also experienced that myself in my own function. Now, I can speak German, not perfect, and especially in the initial years when I was in Germany, I felt rather uncertain to talk in German. And then you notice that it is it even if the people, the colleagues with whom you talk can speak English, it creates a kind of boundary that is not there if you speak German, even if it's not perfect, that's okay. But just being able to have conversations in German, especially in a more informal setting, really makes a difference. I think we should indeed not underestimate it.
100%, 100%. And look, like I don't claim that my German is perfect. Far from that.
Mm.
Actually, my wife, who's an elementary school teacher, always complains about my grammar mistakes. But I made
Yeah.
myself understood. I'm able to write, to speak, and that's enough. I think as long as you
Yeah.
make your message across, and it's a painful process, but it really pays off. And that's the reason why I think that's also, and that's back to your question about some of the misconceptions that not only MBA students, but I think a lot of international students have is many say like, oh, I'm going to go to Germany 3-5 years, and then I'm going to go back to my home country or do something else. In my view, like that's BS. No? Like either you go
Yeah.
all in because it
Yeah.
really takes time to learn the language, build a network. Either you go all in and look at it like a long-term investment, so you're really moving and integrating into the German labor market, or you
Mm.
probably better look at somewhere else. No? Um, so, and again, that's my personal experience and what I've seen with the people that I think have.
No, I agree with you. I have the same experience. So I'm originally from Belgium. Then I spent 10 years in the Netherlands as a professor, building up my network, having contacts with journalists to publish in prominent magazines. And then when I moved in Germany, I quickly noticed that you really have to start from scratch again. Yeah. So although it's like 100 kilometers from where I lived, but the fact that you're in a new country and a new language, the network that you have built in the Netherlands, the added value of that network in Germany is actually extremely limited. And you have to build your whole network from scratch again, which is extremely time consuming. And you should not underestimate the time and effort it takes to build a network. Yeah, and I agree with you that that's often underestimated, I would say.
100%. And that's why I also think that, let's say, for me, the WHU was a fantastic shortcut to accelerate that process.
Mm.
No? Starting with the MBA, it was a great accelerator to build that network. Like you don't start from scratch. No? So that's fantastic. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think looking at it as a long term view, like okay, I'm moving to Germany, and I'm really here for the long run. That's when you have, I think,
Mm.
the biggest chances of success.
No, 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 I agree. Sergio, thanks a lot for sharing all these insights. It's nice to have a talk as two foreigners, and we actually have kind of we had similar motivations to come to Germany. I also have a German wife that kind of
There you
pushed
go.
me to Germany. So maybe the government should think about how they can can kind of leverage that kind of dynamics, or maybe not. But anyway, we are in that way we have similar backgrounds, I would say. Now, we always end the podcast with just asking you for some suggestions about books that you would like to recommend or podcasts. Do you have any suggestions for us?
Well, many. In terms of like I love reading a lot of different business books, and I actually don't read just one, but try to read multiple at the same time. It's not that I read
Okay.
them from beginning to end, but I actually try to just open them up and pick a few um, golden nuggets inside those, and
Okay.
those that I can think of. So you probably know this from Venture Deals from Brad Feltz. That's a book that for me right now it's top of mind because I'm of course trying to understand much better how the venture capital world works, né? Which of course
Mm.
now for us at Sastrify has become a predominant topic. So
Yeah.
Venture Deals, I think it's a great book to better understand how that world works. And there's actually from the same author, from Brad Feld, I'm actually reading a couple of other books, Startup Communities and the Startup Community Way, which has much more to do with just how to create these communities of startups, very much from a city perspective, because I'm also here active in the startup ecosystem in my city where I live, trying to basically build here
Yeah.
the network, um, and it shows like how basically they did it in Boulder, Colorado, in the U.S., and sort of
Yeah.
like what are some of the principles that led to Techstars and all these great accelerators. So
Mm.
those are some of the books that I'm reading right now. So I'm very much right now very deep into startup related literature to
Yeah.
also try to help me perform better my current at my current role at Sastrify.
Okay, great. And any podcasts you're listening to next to this one, of course? But
Well, I'm a big fan of the All In podcast.
okay.
So that's something that I typically never miss every week. I'm listening at podcasts from Scott Galloway. So I would say, unfortunately, it's mostly U.S. podcasts that I'm listening to.
Mm.
I've there's of course some great podcasts in Germany that I follow, like Startup Insider Daily. I pretty much listen at it on a regular basis because of our significant customer base in Germany and the DACH region.
Yeah.
So that's a great way of just keeping up to date with what's happening. But yeah, again, it's mostly startup related podcast that I'm
Okay.
right now hearing, just because it's just so dynamic and the and I think right now it's probably the best medium to catch up with the latest and greatest that is happening.
Yeah. And we often hear on the podcast All In, and of course it's a very popular podcast. Now, I would actually personally say that it's increasingly becoming a political podcast and less of
Yeah.
a startup podcast. So that, at least from my perspective, that's a bit a shame, because I don't know if I want to hear the political recommendations of these American VC people,
Yeah.
whereas I'm very interested in their ideas about kind of how tech is moving, how investment is moving. But at least, unfortunately, I would say in the past months, it has become very political, which,
Yeah,
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 for
definitely.
me, is at least less interesting, let's say. Like,
Definitely. Yeah, I think right now what I've realized in the previous episodes, it's like 50% talking about politics, international. But then the golden nuggets that they throw regarding startups, VC is like, I think those are those golden nuggets is what I still keep with it, because they have some fantastic thinking, which to be honest, I would love that there would be more like these in Europe, no? Like much more
no.
of these type of conversations, no? Where we can also learn
Mm.
more about how the European startup ecosystem is working. But yeah, those are some top of mind.
No, and there I agree with you. And so I also like it that they are willing to have uncomfortable discussions amongst each other, which I think you don't have a lot of podcasts that can do that in a nice way, and that I think they are able to do. So in that way, yeah, I'm also still listening. It's not that I gave up or something, but sometimes it feels a bit like, oh, I need to kind of process through stuff that, yeah, is not really that exciting. But yeah, I would say I would agree with your perspective on it. Okay, so Sergio, thanks again for taking the time to talk with us. I hope our audience also enjoyed this episode, and please don't forget to rate us if you like our podcast, and hopefully you will listen us to again in the next episodes. Bye.
Thank you.